What this project isn't, and who we aren't. That's sort of as important as who we are, and we really want to frame this in this intro video on the right foot so that folks know what to expect from the content that's coming next. The first thing I want to chat about was how we want to recognize that we are not first or worst hit by the climate crisis, and who we are as white people, as people who aren't struggling to meet our basic survival needs.
I think it's important for us to always come from that place of understanding that we have a very privileged lens, and so there's going to be some bias through that lens that we need to apologize for in advance.
And just round out by being very honest about where we're located in our own journey, and where we have some inability to offer analysis or ideas because we haven't experienced some things, or the peoples that we come from or our families haven't experienced those things. And so we're going to work hard to bring in a lot of different types of storytellers and a lot of different voices, and amplify the voices of folks who we can't chat with directly. But we also know that eco-anxiety and privilege kind of can go together often. And what I've been noticing as we've chatted more about it is that a lot of folks who feel anxious more than maybe grief or anger or some other emotions that go with anxiety. If anxiety is your kind of dominant relationship with the climate crisis, it might be because you've never experienced an existential threat before in your life. You've never had to wonder if your children are going to have a thriving future, or if your needs are going to be at risk of going unmet. And so I think unpacking these feelings and being honest that we're scared of losing what we have because we have a lot of benefit in the current system is not a bad place to start this conversation. And in that sense, as white people and people of privilege, I think it's really important that we start this conversation with our friends and family and our communities, because we have influence there.
Yeah, it's also where we are.
Exactly.
And I think a big part of this project is meeting people where they are, because if you feel like you're not empowered to be a part of this conversation, then right off the hop, we're eliminating a big portion of the population. Our feelings are real, and we want to help to normalize that for a lot of people.
Yeah, and we can do that by pointing out that there are other populations and communities around the world that are suffering way more than us, and who have way less to do historically with this problem. Not to mention people who have faced existential crises already, Indigenous peoples in Canada and around the world, Black people in the States and around the world. There's a lot of communities that know what it means to grieve their way of life being challenged, if not decimated. And so I think really looking to those histories, those writers, those voices today is something that we are trying to do, and we want to model that and kind of be honest about how that looks, I guess, because it's a messy thing learning to unpack your own privilege, and it's hard to do that in isolation. And so that's something we want to try to work into this as well. All right, so second thing we wanted to clarify is that we aren't climate scientists or mental health professionals.
No. Yeah, and I think it took us a while to understand, it took me a while anyways, to understand my place in this. And I think naming that is a big part of us feeling empowered to be in this work. This
platform is really not about education. We want to open up the conversation about the emerging concepts around eco-anxiety, because it's a relatively new field. But we aren't here to, provide a 101 about climate science or really get people to believe in the problem. We're really here for people who already recognize what's going on, at least insofar as knowing that it's bad, it's caused by human behavior, it's overwhelmingly caused by certain types of human behavior in certain countries, systems. And we're also not here to pathologize, and this really isn't about naming any kind of mental disorder or mental illness. This is about something that's very rational, something that a response to a crisis that really makes a lot of sense. And so as people sort of wake up to their eco-anxiety or start to recognize what's going on with the climate crisis, I think these feelings are very normal as a response, and that's why we're trying to normalize everyday people talking about it. But that said, we really want to engage with scientists and mental health experts, and already have started doing that, really to talk to them about their stories.
People who have been in this sphere for longer than we have, and have likely dealt with this kind of anxiety longer than we have. So have some great ideas and tools for how they've handled that.
Totally.
Right? How have they kept themselves engaged and continuing to take action. And I mean, hats off to the people who have been able to do that, because one thing that we've certainly realized is that this idea, the relationship between education and anxiety is very real. Yeah. And certainly as more and more education happens and there's more talk around this climate crisis, it's a good thing. And I think that the folks and institutions that are handling that are making it a very pronounced topic. The challenge is that for the rest of us, it can lead to a lot of anxiety. That it can be something that you can't get away from, no matter where you are, whether in your LinkedIn feed or Twitter, or if you're just watching TV now, it's showing up. So while that's a good thing, it also leads to a lot of anxiety.
I've been affirmed by folks in those sectors that this is really what's needed right now, is to focus on emotions and values and people's actual experience of this. Because we can have we have the policy and technical solutions at hand, but there's this cultural shift, this political shift, this power shift that really needs to happen. And that's only going to happen if we really get honest about what we care about and what the stakes actually are and what we actually want and what it'll actually take to get there. And so I think one thing we keep returning to in our chats with folks is that this is about creating a lifelong relationship with our eco-anxiety. This isn't about coming up with a couple of quick tips to put this in your back pocket and go on with your day. This is really about, how do you acknowledge that this isn't going away anytime soon. This is a multi-generational thing that's going to happen in terms of us addressing this crisis and managing the destruction that it's already causing.
Yeah.
And so we need to get used to seeing these stories in our feed, while not getting used to, or in the sense of not having access, I suppose, to those feelings and the values that they're really rooted in, not getting numb to that.
Right.
And that's hard.
Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? How do we stay engaged without becoming numb? Yeah. How do we allow ourselves to feel those feelings and let those feelings be okay, so that we can stay engaged with a full heart and with meaning, right?
Yeah, and it's not about who you are so much as when we all are in this story, that this is the window of time, the decade that we can really make a difference and move the needle on how bad things are going to get. And so so now is the time. You belong just on the basis of being alive and caring about the world you live in.
Right. And I think this is where this idea of stories is so prevalent, is that we understand and we've learned and we've experienced that the ability for folks from all different walks of life to share experiences can be a really powerful tool in overcoming this. So you don't need to be an expert in climate science or a health practitioner to engage in this kind of conversation, or to listen to these kinds of stories, or tell your feelings around these kinds of stories.
Yeah, we always say you're the expert on your story. You're the expert on what these realities mean in terms of a person's life, because it's your life. So that's where we want to start this conversation. But our third point is that this isn't the start of the conversation, nor is it the end of the conversation. And as you mentioned, there are people who've been working on this very issue for decades. There are entire communities of people who have never lost this idea of the connection between, our values and our ways of life, or our relationship to the land. And so we don't want to claim any kind of credit for starting this conversation, but we really hope to focus it and to give it a platform to flourish. And knowing that every sector, every community, every context sort of needs its own homegrown conversation about eco-anxiety. So that's where our consulting services come in, and being able to start some of that. But also we encourage and hope that lots of different types of initiatives pop up around this, and that we can be a part of them, or just kind of point people to all the great work that's happening.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how we're certainly not the first ones to talk about this, but what the world really needs right now is great leadership. And so I think this was our opportunity to offer some leadership, or to work with others to step into their own version of leadership in this new sort of sphere. And
it really is about support, ongoing support to do that too, I think. We didn't want to take on something that had a really clear end date, even though we don't know exactly what this will turn into.
Yeah.
We know that it's a space where we can kind of figure that out. And I think for both of us, we knew that this will be a conversation we want to return to for the rest of our work and our lives. So having a space to do that made a lot of sense. And I hope others find value in that as well. If not, this will just be a really fun vanity project for us. But I hope that folks are really tuned in and that we can shape it around what's needed and what's actually practical and really useful in this moment in time.
This has been it has been a lot of work, and you may see some big bags under my eyes. It's not only from being a sleep deprived parent, but we have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this. Yeah. We're really passionate about this, and we're really excited to see this go live and to get these resources and these stories told. I think it's been a real clear vision for us for a long time now. I guess really in the grand scheme of things it's a fairly short time, but we now are at this next phase where our goal was to get a really great platform of some diverse content so that we had a good sample of what we could do. And now this next phase is about figuring out how we can sustain this. Yeah. And so that's where really you're going to come in. We're going to need some support, and we're bound by nothing. We can do a lot. Yeah. But certainly we need to get creative with bringing in some resources to do that.
Yeah, and some people who have stories to tell. I think one thing that we've been really blown away by is just how strong the response has been without having a full website and without having regular content coming out. We have an Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages that have been live for a few months now, as well as LinkedIn. But it's been really overwhelming, actually, how many folks have already started kind of following and contributing to this conversation. And we sense that there's a lot of creative, awesome people to kind of work with. And we've already had a lot of them come our way. And a lot of them have been willing to volunteer their time and their skills. But we don't want to set up a model that's built on relying on people who are already really struggling and offering a lot of themselves to continue doing that on our site. So we really want to be able to support artists and creators and amazing folks who have really important things to share with us. So we hope that you'll consider subscribing to our Patreon. But even if you're just here for the content, most of it's going to make its way onto the website, whether you're a subscriber or not. And we really want to keep the bar very, very low in terms of joining our community and engaging with us. It's really about conversations about courage and compassion and meaningful action that come out of these anxieties that we share.